G'day guys, and welcome to the second round of the Formula Drift Championship in a very wet and wild Seattle. The drive up here was absolutely beautiful as always. Coming out through Utah and the Pacific Northwest is by far one of the most beautiful road trips in the US, so despite the fact it took 40 hours to get here, it was a very scenic drive. The car's been going great. The guys are just working on putting some anti-fog strips in there at the moment, kind of like the rear demister that you'd have on a normal road car. We actually run those on the front and side glass just to try and combat some of that fog that happens in climates like this and track days like this. We've got rain forecast every day through to Sunday, so it's going to be a pretty wet and wild weekend. I probably didn't need to pack the 120 pounds of nitrous, but it's always good to come prepared. I think we might be able to do the whole event on just a pair of tyres. Other than that, not too much to report just yet. I'll check back in with you during our first practice session. The first practice session, unfortunately, was a little bit of a throwaway. Just as we were about to go out, the spark plugs fouled. Fortunately, we have Jason from Link ECU here. He came over, quickly checked the fuel map, and it looked like we had a little bit too much fuel at idle. So he took out 25% fuel for us. The boys changed out the plugs real quick, and then the car started and it was running great. I got to the start line and I turned the car off because we were queued up for quite a long time. There'd been a crash on track. And unfortunately, when I went to start it, there was an issue with the starter motor. Turns out it wasn't the starter motor, but actually the bulkhead connector on the firewall. One of the pins in there had worked its way loose. And so when I was pushing the button on the PDM to start the car, nothing was happening. So with all that going on, the first session was a throwaway, which was a shame, but at least we got the car running.
Holding it? Okay. It's okay now.
The boys are working me overtime. I'm having lunch in the office today. So in the second session, it was great to get the car to the start line. We were first ones online with Kelsey Rawlings. The car was running great. The thing that I noticed though is because we run a really thin speedway style disc to try and keep the rotational mass down on the car, when we were on the bank, it was pushing the brake pistons back in. So I'd come to the end of the bank with 125 mile an hour or 210 kilometer an hour wheel speed and have no brakes. So the handbrake wasn't working and the foot brake wasn't working. So I was having to pump both to try and get pressure back in so I could left foot brake and tuck in coming off the bank. So unfortunately we didn't have any time to fix that. So I just sent it for 8 laps. We tried the first few with no nitrous, and just towards the end of the bank, the car started to straighten out a little bit. Then we put 150 shot of nitrous on there and the stars aligned and it was a great thing to drive. So the boys are just working on it now. They are putting in a set of pressure valves in the brake lines. So basically that's going to hold 15 psi of pressure on the brake pads at all times, so that as the rotor deflects, it won't push back in, so I'll always have handbrake and foot brake feel. So other than that, there's not too much to tell you guys for tonight. Hopefully the boys tied up, they're working on it, I'm sure it will. It's still pretty early, so we'll get this knocked over in the next hour, go home and get some sleep, and be back here for tomorrow.